Just start, stop. That's how we do that? Oh, goodness gracious. This is so complicated. This is so hard. This is what this looks like. Totally crooked. All right, let me show you what I got. So, been taking apart the rally car for the last couple days, weeks, months, whatever. If you've been following along Instagram, we got the engine out, and the engine currently is in two pieces. Engine and transmission are split apart. But one of the things I had to do is I had to take the engine out through the bottom. And the reason why I had to do that is because the axles were actually locked inside the transmission. So there was no way to get the engine out the top, so I had to basically drop it out the bottom. That involves sort of clearing everything out of the way and lowering it onto the ground, and then jacking up the entire car, you know, a good 3 feet in the air, and then sort of sliding this thing out. Made a little skid for it. Some plywood bolted to the underside of where the transmission and the oil pan go. But let's go over to the bench and maybe do some failure analysis. So I find... Hey, what's that background? So I finally got the differential out of the car, and it's on the bench here, so let's take a look. For starters, I'll show you what I like to call the screw veneer. This is the back of the back end of a stub axle that looks like it was sheared. It's actually been cut. Actually spent the better part of 45 minutes grinding on that, and then finally you can see I just hammered it off, and that last little maybe half-inch chunk there that was still hanging on. But if we take a look, this, you can kind of tell this is a kind of grubby aftermarket axle. And one of the things I made the mistake of doing is when I first got it, it wasn't going in correctly. And I smoothed out the edge of this a little bit so that it would sort of get in there. But as you can see, some of these teeth are actually missing. And so that was kind of part of the problem. So what happens is there's a C-clip. This is the remainder of it. Here's the remainder of it. So this C-clip or circlip or whatever you want to call it goes around in here, and that's what holds it in the transmission. So it gets squeezed together. Then it pops into the transmission, and there's a little bevel on the inside, or we'll actually look to see there actually isn't a little bevel on the inside. And what happens is that this expands a little bit and just prevents the axle from popping out. So the idea is that this should just, you know, be able to pop in, pop out with a little bit of force, little hammer on it, little smack with a long screwdriver on it to pop it in and out. Should be no problem. But as I found out, both of these got stuck inside the differential. So let's take it apart. I'll show you what a limited slip differential. Now this is a copy. This is a fine, probably Chinese copy of the Mopar limited slip differential. It's the Quaife style with the gears. I had this one professionally shimmed. There's some washers and shims in the center that can be tuned and measured. And so I had that done to this one, but it wasn't enough. Still wasn't enough to get good quality. So I can't quite tell if it's my fault per se with those aftermarket axles I used, or the modification I did to them, or it was this limited slip. So let's start taking some of these out here. And I'll show you what this thing is made of. Hammer dammer, nope. Okay. So there we go. That's the two surfaces there. I'll put this one over here. And as you can see, you've got helical gears, helical, that lock into both sides. So there's two of these on either side, and then there's this gear pack in the center. So I'll pull off these helicals here. And so there's this sort of washer gear pack in the center. Now I'm going to tilt it so I can grab it with all the stuff inside it. Okay, and like I said, it's got two pieces kind of squeezed together. It's got some washers and shims, etc. in there, and that serves to give a little load. They're like spring-loaded to affect the limited slip, how much this set slips. So it can be tuned. And then on the other side, you see the other side. So if you look, the axle, I'll remove this. The axle pops in there on this side. Now this one is, oh god, this is taking a beating. So I had, in order to get this out of the car, I had to hit it with a sledgehammer on the back side of it. So, or on the front side of it, should I say, once I had the differential completely opened up. And yeah, that doesn't want to go in there. So that's kind of part of the problem. So it you know, the splines don't quite line up. But the other issue is that if you look on the inside, I don't know, you'll be able to see that. But on the inside, there's a little bevel to the splines, and it's not quite all the way to the surface, not quite all the way flat. And I think what happened is, or I know what happened is, once it got in there, it basically hung up on this edge, and so this edge isn't really smooth. It's sort of a sharp edge that doesn't allow that C-clip to compress and slide back through at all. So it kind of got hung up in there, and there's still, you can see these little chunks of C-clip and bits of this metal that are still in there. So this all has to be cleaned and completely redone. All the parts need to be cleaned, all the metal shavings, everything needs to come off it. I just put it back together so that it wouldn't be an explosive mess all over my workbench. Yeah, so now I've got a part, so we'll see kind of what's next step. We'll be cleaning this all out, checking to make sure this shim pack had some damage onto it. I don't know, from maybe the axles, from hammering on the axles on the outside. I don't know, but we'll have to check that and get it back together, and hopefully we can come up with a new solution. We get a new set of axles, ones that aren't junky garbage like this.